What's up guys, Lvladen here, and today I'm coming at you with a video on my Ret Paladin. These are going to be games where I was pushing Gladiator with my friends, kind of a sorted MMR. I think most of the games are around 24 to high 2500s. Pretty fun games. I fortunately finished Gladiator, and then we finished up a couple of my friends' Gladiator pushes as well. Primarily played Ret Warrior Mistweaver, Ret Warrior Preservation, and very early in the season we played some Ret Arms Resto Druid. All in all, this PvP season wasn't super enjoyable for me, and the main reason is the lack of participation. More often than not, we would fight one team over and over again, and a lot of these clips here I tried to filter out some of the teams that we fought duplicates of, but I still had fun playing threes. Threes is still one of my favorite things to do in WoW. I enjoy the arena, and now instead of commentary, because I feel like, you know, the gameplay kind of speaks for itself, Ret Warrior, Zug, I want to talk a little bit about how Ret Paladin feels in the current patch, which is 11.1.7, what it's looking like in 11.2, and some of the changes that I hope we can see for Ret in the near future, hopefully before the next expansion. So one of the first things that I'll talk about here is the rotation itself in PvP. Now, I've played Ret a very long time, so my opinions are, you know, obviously a little bit biased to some of my favorite expansions, but to me, Ret has always been a melee class. And after Legion, during Legion and after Legion, Ret suffered from a lack of mobility, like a really bad lack of mobility. Blizzard decided at one point to just remove all of Ret's mobility and instead like make it a really big damage powerhouse, you know, kind of in cooldowns and out of cooldowns, whereas historically Ret was more of like a burst specialization. And when this happened, the weakness of Ret Paladins became its mobility, and that was not fun to play. Legion, while thematically and story-wise and even balance-wise, I really thought Legion was a good expansion. Legion was the first time that I quit playing my Ret Paladin, and that was because of the lack of mobility. Just was not fun to me. And when Ret was eventually reworked after, like, towards the end of season 1 of Dragonflight, I actually did like the rework. I enjoyed it for a time. It felt different, but it felt different because it was different. It was very different from my favorite iteration of Ret, which is anywhere you could pick and choose between Cataclysm and Warlords of Draenor. Cata, Mop, Warlords of Draenor were my favorite times to play Ret Paladin. Now, in Dragonflight, when the rework happened, Ret was clearly overpowered, like really overpowered. It had no clear weakness. It had very strong self-healing, very strong defenses, very strong consistent damage, and burst damage. And obviously the Retpocalypse happened, and no one wanted Ret to be viable ever again. And actually, after 3 weeks of nerfs, Ret remained pretty much unchanged PvP balance-wise until the beginning of the War Within, which was the next time that we saw a couple of PvP balance tuning changes, and it remained pretty good. It remained a solid like S tier, A tier specialization, and then it was kind of blown out of the water in the War Within season 1 when you know, you had Fury Warriors and Resto Druids being very strong as well. Ret kind of went back to the top and felt great to play. Now, or I'm sorry, it felt strong and competitive. Now, where my problem with Ret, or my one critique of Ret is right now, is pretty much with the damage rotation. And this was my critique, I had similar critiques after they made changes to Templar Strike in the beginning of the expansion. And that's the problem, where every one of our generators essentially does the same thing. It's a ranged attack with pretty much the same range, generates a holy power or 2 holy power, and then you press it into Final Verdict. And while, you know, Judgment, you know, applies your Greater Judgment, which is an amplifier for your Final Verdict, and your Blade of Justice applies a damage over time effect, which is an amplifier for all your damage, and, you know, your Hammer of Wrath, it's just a filler spell. I think that's my problem. All our generators kind of look and feel the same. And I'm not a fan of not having at least one melee spell. I really like having a melee spell on a melee specialization, and now our only melee spell is, it's unfortunately just auto attacks. I don't like Hammer of Wrath as a melee spell. I really want Hammer of Wrath to be removed from the rotation and go back to being a spell that does not proc from your Final Verdict. I think right now we have way too much holy power. Way too much holy power. The cooldown on our generators are too short. There's like no downtime. You have absolutely no downtime in the rotation, which is why Crusading Strikes is taken instead of Templar Strikes. And although, like, you know, not many people want downtime in the rotation, including myself, the rotation is so incredibly fast paced that I feel like after playing Mist of Pandaria again, I feel like there's room to just give these abilities one charge. You know, have one charge of Hammer of Wrath, but have it do an excessive amount of damage. Have it do more damage than Blade of Justice, have it do more damage than Judgment. Give the rotational abilities a clear priority instead of, you know, spam 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for essentially the same result, no matter if you push your Judgment first or your Blade of Justice first or your Hammer of Wrath first. It all just kind of feels the same. Now, I really like the fact that Final Verdict feels like it does damage. And it's great. Like, Final Verdict absolutely, you know, it pumps. But it still doesn't, like, chunk the way that I remember or the way that I want it to. And I think the way that you get that chunky damage in Final Verdict back, like, I like that in our breakdown, Final Verdict is the highest damaging ability, whether it's, you know, Templar or Herald. But the problem I have is I think we're throwing out too many Final Verdicts. I think the rotation is probably too fast. It's become too fast. And in order to, you know, compensate the fast rotation, the spender damage has to be lower in value. And one of the reasons that also happens is that there's so many modifiers on all the abilities. And here's my biggest critique of the War Within and Dragonflight, and perhaps I was wrong on the whole talent system. I was really happy with the Dragonflight rework talent system, and to be fair, I still do really like the modern World of Warcraft talents. But my problem is they're unable to be balanced. There's too many, and clearly there's either not enough people at Blizzard working on this, or there's not enough people at Blizzard testing these things, because there have been bugs with not just Ret Paladin, but, you know, a lot of classes throughout the entire expansion, including going into 11.2. Like, for example, Burn to Ash is supposed to modify Empyrean Hammer damage after a hotfix, and then in 11.1, that when they reworked the Hammer of Light coding, I guess, that interaction broke, and it no longer modifies I believe it's Zealous Vindication. Is that the talents here? Let me just double check. The Zealous Vindication, Hammer of Light, Empyrean Hammers aren't modified by Burn to Ash, which basically removes 30% of your Empyrean Hammer damage during your burst. So that doesn't feel great. But it's bugs like this that keep popping up with the talent system that, you know, people thought Mist of Pandaria was a really convoluted expansion where every class had everything. But after I played, you know, some of the beta, some of the pre-patch, you really realize that everything in the rotation had a clear priority. It flowed together, and despite all these trees, you know, having all these talents, a lot of them are not optional. Everything ultimately becomes cookie cutter eventually. It doesn't have to be that way, and the way that it's not that way is if there are frequent enough tuning passes to make talents competitive. But say, for example, I really wanted to play a melee melee paladin playing Templar strikes with the Templar specialization, I'm putting myself at such a severe disadvantage in PvP that I can't get over those barriers that you know, I need. Like, for example, I tried playing Templar a couple times in solo shuffle, and the way that the game works, where they're long and drawn out and not based around burst damage, makes Templar essentially unplayable in PvP. And unfortunately, we don't have enough frequent tuning passes to actually you know, balance not only Ret's Herald and Templar specializations, but most of the other specializations that have either leaned one way or the other. Granted, not every class is like that. There are quite a few classes out there where both hero specializations work, but I think in practice, unfortunately, it hasn't played out like that. I do appreciate, like, you know, during the beginning of season 1 and throughout most of season 1 actually, and the very beginning of season 2, there were quite a few tuning passes, but you know, after a little while, they slowed down and stopped, probably because of the development on Midnight or in 11.2. But you know, PvP kind of got left behind, and it's a little unfortunate. I'll probably make another video in the future about how I feel about the lack of innovation in PvP. So, for example, you know, there's no new rewards for solo shuffle. You can't even use the legend pendant in the majority of the game. Like, you can use it in the open world, and that's pretty much it. Can't use it in arena, can't use it while leveling up. There's no new cool items. I believe I'm almost honor level 1000 at this point, which means I have not seen a honor level reward in almost, you know, half my honor levels, which is crazy. That system came out in the Legion, and then they never really went back to it, which is unfortunate. Like, that was some of the coolest things about Legion, was the honor level rewards, and I desperately hope that Blizzard goes back and updates PvP reward tracks, seasonal reward tracks, not just elite recolor sets, but, you know, unique PvP rewards where you can work towards them throughout the course of a season, almost like a battle pass, I guess. It could be a combination of rating plus honor levels, or even just a unique season, you know, I guess reputation style reward system. That's what I hoped was coming in the season 3 rewards refresh, which was laid out in the roadmap for 11.2. But it looks like as we get closer to the beginning of August that none of that is going to happen, along with the PvP talent rework, which also does not look like it's going to happen. I think one of the few things coming to Paladin is the removing hallowed ground, but for holy paladins. So all of the honor talent suggestions that we had as a community from season 1 so far are not being implemented. I'm not going to say that, you know, I'm not giving up hope that they're not going to be implemented, but it just looks like, from a lack of development standpoint in PvP, that these things aren't a priority at the moment, which is unfortunate. I'm leaning towards playing Mist of Pandaria for at least season 1, unless the Glad Mount changes on retail or significant updates come to classes on retail. So we'll see how it goes. But again, I know I got a little off track in the video. One of the things that I really want to see for Ret Paladin in the future, which quite honestly probably won't be this expansion, but maybe the next, is definitely slowing down the pace that we get holy power. One of my ideas would be, you know, have judgment, 1 spell, 1 holy power, a shorter cooldown, 4-second, 5-second baseline cooldown. Make Blade of Justice 6 to 8 second cooldown, something like that. Generate 1 holy power. Bring back Crusader Strike, or make Templar Strike a 1 charge spell with a double hit, something like that. Generates 1 holy power, and then Omega buff Final Verdict. Like, Omega buff Final Verdict, and then remove some of the modifiers, like remove Blessing of Dawn, remove Holy Flames, maybe even remove Greater Judgment, and simplify these spells and modifiers down, and just buff the baseline ability significantly. And then you can buff cool spells like Final Reckoning or Execution Sentence to do significant damage and significant modifiers. So it makes your cooldowns feel more impactful without having super high one-shot potential, but also at the same time making the standard rotation feel a lot better, and not feeling like we have an overflow. We're always constantly overcapping Holy Power, while at the same time Final Verdict feeling like it does no damage without modifiers. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. A little bit more than 2 cents, probably like, 120 cents, but just a couple ideas that I would really like to see. I mean, just playing these older expansions just really goes to show how well things worked together in the past, rotation-wise, and how, convoluted and full of fluff that they've become in the modern expansion. It feels like whack-a-mole with a lot of class rotations, which is fine for some classes, but I have max level of almost every class. I think I'm missing Shadow Priest and Druid right now. And Shadow Priest and Druid, and that's it. I think I have everything else at max level, and I've played it a ton. Like, playing my Hand Shaman right now, it's like whack-a-mole for the rotation. Playing my Demon Hunter, whack-a-mole for the rotation. Like, everything is so rapid-fire pace, and maybe that needs to tone down a little bit while making the abilities a little bit stronger for everyone. But we'll see. All right. Thanks for listening to my rant, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the games. And I will see you all next time. Peace.